Hey, it's Zack, and I'm back with another episode of Elevate and Accelerate, and I'm super excited to be welcoming a very special guest today, Dr. Judy Morgan. She is a world-renowned holistic veterinarian, pet health advocate. She works with pet owners, obviously, as well, but also an amazing entrepreneur and somebody who is very passionate about helping those people as well. She's got 7 best-selling books, a popular YouTube channel, a beloved podcast, Naturally Healthy Pets podcast, and you told me just before we jumped on here that you're working on book number 8. So prolific writer, to say the least. But obviously you didn't start there, and we're going to jump into a little bit of your story and kind of what this all is all about. But Dr. Judy, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for the invitation. I'm really excited for this, actually.
Oh, good. Well, I'm glad. Hopefully you'll feel the same way at the end of it too. So look, I know that you had a veterinary practice in New Jersey for 20 years or whatever it was, and now you've got an online retail and pet supplies and supplements and all this kind of stuff. But kind of walk our readers, or our listeners rather, through this journey of what kind of led you into this industry and where it all began.
Oh my gosh. Well, I guess I can blame my mother because she grew up on a farm and she is just all about animals. And she loves baby anything. So, when we get baby chickens or if there's a baby anything born on our farm, she's all about it. And so she was always that way. My father was not an animal person. He had a hunting dog. So we had our house dog and then he had his hunting dog. And my sister and I would try to pretty up the hunting dog once in a while and keep him in the house for a few days. And oh man, he just hated it. But my sister and I got horses when we were in junior high. And my mother signed us up for 4-H because we didn't know anything. My sister always wanted a horse. My dad was moving us from New Jersey to Virginia for a new job. And my sister was going into 7th grade. She was whiny. She's going to 8th. Whiny, obnoxious. And he said, if you will just stop, I will buy you a horse.
So that's the secret.
That was the secret.
Yeah.
And she got in the car willingly and we went to Virginia and we moved, and within a couple of weeks we bought our first horse and literally knew nothing about how to take care of a horse. So we found some place to keep it. My mom went and sweet talked some guy for $10 a month to keep our horse, came with all the hay and everything.
Good deal.
And by the end of a year, that place actually ended up being a riding academy with a trainer and riding arenas and 40 boarding horses. It ended up being a really cool deal that started with our one little pony. So then when we moved back to New Jersey, we brought our ridiculous 2 junkyard horses with us and joined 4-H. And I learned a lot about public speaking in 4-H, and I learned a lot about caring for animals. And I have to say 4-H is probably what really turned the corner for me. But my riding instructor in New Jersey, we got into showing, and it's that you spent $100 for the first horse, and now here you are spending thousands and thousands and thousands. The typical story. But my riding instructor's daughter was a veterinarian, and she came and stayed at the farm for a summer and helped me, or let me help her as she was treating equine patients. And I just thought that was the coolest thing I'd ever done. She let me help with a surgery on my pony. And
how old were you when you were going
I was in 8th grade.
Eighth
8th grade, so 12, 13.
Or so. Wow, that's so cool.
And so I got to help her all summer, and I just idolized her. Like anything she said, I was like, okay. And so I followed her around and I said, this is what I want to do. And from that point on, so, all through high school, I was like, nope, I'm going to vet school. I'm going to vet school. I'm going to vet school. All through college, going to vet school. And let me tell you, at that point, this was in the 1970s, late 70s, everybody tried to talk me out of it because it was so difficult to get into veterinary school. And when I went to Cook College, which is part of Rutgers in New Jersey, for my undergrad. And my advisor said, 1 in 13 applicants gets in. You're not going to get in.
Oh, wow.
And everybody was just so negative. And so the backup plan for most pre-vet students is you'll go to med school because it's so much easier to get into med school. And so I took a human anatomy and physiology class. I went to the library and got a book, an anatomy book, and there were cross sections of human bodies.
Yeah.
in pictures in the book. And I opened it and I saw the first one. I wanted to vomit. And I said, I won't even make it out of anatomy class freshman year. I can't do this. Med school is not on the table.
Wow.
So it's vet school or bust. And luckily I made
Yeah,
it.
you made it all the way through, and that's so wild. And I think it's amazing too. And you touched on this briefly about how much impact one person can have on the trajectory of our lives. And a
Yes.
lot of times it may be the most unsuspecting, interaction that we have that changes the
Yeah.
course of history for us. And for you, it sent you on this journey. I mean, most people, I didn't know what I was doing when I was 20, and you were ready when you were 12, and here you are. And so that's really cool. What a great story. So, so you opened up a couple of veterinary clinics in New Jersey, and you did that for some time, and that was your passion. What was the time or the pivotal moment that kind of led you into this whole holistic and natural pet medicine and some of those things that really shifted gears for you?
So when I had my clinics, um, and I did a lot of things leading up to owning my own practices. I did
Mm,
relief work. I worked for, 2 doctor practices. I worked in emergency medicine for 10 years, which I loved.
wow.
That's the if you're that type A personality that really likes a lot of stimulation, emergency medicine's a pretty good way
Yeah.
to get it.
And do you travel
Um,
for that? Like, I'm just curious what emergency medicine for pets look like. Like, did they come to you or?
no, I worked in an emergency hospital
Oh,
in
like in
southern New
actual.
Jersey for 10 years.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
So I learned so much there, tons of surgery. And the thing is, at that point, we were still small. And so I was the only doctor on. And if something came in the middle of the night that needed a surgery I had never done, it was like, well, going to figure it out right now. So it really required a lot of just pull yourself up by the seat of your pants and say, I'm just going to do
Hmm.
this. There were times my technicians would be standing there reading the instructions for the surgery to me out of a book while I was figuring out what I was doing.
That's incredible.
Surgical technique is surgical technique. It's just, what am I looking for?
Yeah.
Um, so that was really cool. But when I became a partner in the first clinic that I owned, which I bought out my partner eventually, I accidentally took a chiropractic class. I didn't know what it was,
Hmm.
and so I showed up for this course. And on the first day, I went, I think this guy's talking about chiropractic. I don't even know if I believe in that, and I didn't know you could do it on animals. And we had paid for it, so I stayed. And then I started using it when I got back, and it was pivotal in my
Wow.
practice. It was like, oh my god, then I had to cry and feel guilty over all those patients that had been
Hmm.
euthanized, that had back problems or lamenesses or things that we couldn't fix, and now I had this new tool that was fixing things. So I kind of went, well, that was neat. What else is there to learn? So I started studying homeopathy and acupuncture and raindrop therapy, color therapy, essential oils, like you name it. I was just like all over the place,
Yeah.
learning as much as I could about everything. And traditional Chinese medicine was what really hooked me. So acupuncture, Chinese herbs, and food, using food as medicine, that's my real passion. And at that point, after I started getting into all of this, my business partner owned another veterinary clinic down the road. And he said, oh my gosh, I don't know. I don't understand this voodoo that you're now doing. It's like black magic or something. And he said, I don't do this. And I just want to do traditional medicine. I think it's time for us to part ways.
Hmm.
I said, great, I'll buy you out. You have your clinic up the road. I have my clinic, and, we each do our own thing. So we parted very amicably, split the staff between us because the staff would go back and forth between the two hospitals
Okay.
too. So we had, it was like choosing sides for your baseball team. It's like,
You picked and I pick,
but it
and
worked out
yeah.
really well. Yeah, exactly. And then I ended up opening a second clinic, right during the downturn of 2008, 2009. Really bad timing,
Yeah.
but
Oh,
it worked
yeah.
out.
That's rough, but you survived that, thankfully too, because I love this.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll give you just a personal story of this since you were talking about chiropractic for dogs. So we have a pug, and a boxer Ridgeback pit bull mix that we had rescued, and didn't know the pit bull part until she got older, and absolutely love it because I love pit bulls anyway. She's just, she's the best with our kids, and so on and so forth. But we, here in Philadelphia, there's like the Wissahickon Valley Trail and a lot of different things. And there was this one part where we would take the dogs, and there was this like cliff. It was like probably an 8 foot like sort of overhang or whatever above the trail. And my larger dog would run up there and my pug would go after her. Well, the larger dog decided it would make sense for her to kind of jump. And so she could put her legs on some of the rocks and go straight down. And my pug was like, oh, I'll follow. This will be fun. Like,
Oh God.
came straight down the thing and, kind of landed a little bit on her head and got impacted. And so we went through this whole process of like, she was hobbling when she walked. She couldn't have all this stuff. And my wife found a chiropractic veterinarian who did that on the dog. And she was better in 2 sessions. And hasn't had a single problem since. And it was
Isn't
remarkable
it cool?
because the advice we were getting was, well, you're probably going to have to put her down. There's no way we can see her recovering from this. That was kind of the idea. So it's really cool that you found that and found a lot of stuff. So
Yep.
Now we could very easily and maybe probably touch on in some ways just all the different things that you've done to really help pets. But one of the biggest things I know, and having talked with you before, is starting your e-commerce business, right? So it was like once you had these practices, people were coming to you and asking where they can get these tinctures or how they can get these different food supplements or the stuff that was going to make their dogs well. And so kind of walk me through the process of now having a business and a practice and how this one came from that as well.
Yeah, it was really interesting. So when I wrote my first book, I had no idea how to market a book. And so I signed on with Steve Harrison, who has Quantum Leap and, helps helps book writers market and proclaim their expertise. And let me tell you, for the first year with him, and we'd have to stand up and say, I'm an expert, blah, blah, blah. I could not get those words out of my mouth to save my life. And he's like, you're like the Deepak Chopra of the veterinary world. And you cannot say I'm an expert. Like, what is wrong with you? And I was like, I don't know. So Steve would tell us we had to be on social media and we had to get our name known and we had to brand ourselves and we had to get out there. So I went to this veterinary conference in Georgia. It was a holistic conference. And I brought a film team with me, which was my son and my husband, with big cameras and microphones, because my son is an esports broadcaster. So he's got tons of equipment. So we flew him in and we're walking around and everybody thinks like we're some big TV crew. Nobody knows who I am, but they think we're some big crew. So we were just running around interviewing everybody to get information and stuff to put on social media. Like all I wanted was a bunch of stuff that I could go home. And so we made about 30 videos, interviews during that time. And one of the people that I interviewed made this deer antler velvet supplement from New Zealand. And he had 2 products, a dental product and a wellness vitamin type thing. And he said he started calling me after we got home from the conference. And the video that we did with him was so bad, I never published it. And I thought, oh, he's just calling me for not publishing that video. And so on the 12th phone call where he called my office, my staff was like, you have got to talk to this guy because we can't put him off anymore. Like, we're tired of taking this phone call from this guy in New Zealand. So I finally took the phone call and I said, you're just calling to yell at me about the video. And he goes, well, that was how I started. He said, that was why I was calling. But he said, it ended up, the more I thought about it, the more I liked you. And I want to market these products in the US direct to consumer. And I need a face and a name and I need a brand. And I said, I'm none of that. I don't know how to do that. And he said, no, you're it. So he conned my husband into making labels for the products. He sent us a whole bunch of product. And the product sat in my back room for like 6 months. And my dad got sick. We had to sell our house, move in with my parents, like all kinds of stuff. And so one day I'm in my back room at the clinic and I look at all this product and I'm like, crap, this guy's going to send me a bill for all this stuff. Like, I'm going to owe him like $10,000 for product. And I haven't touched it. And I don't know how to do this. So I gave a bunch of it as samples to a friend who has a senior dog hospice sanctuary. And I said, just try this stuff out. Tell me what you think. She called me up a week later and said, I don't know what you've done to my dogs, but they're running around like crazy. They're like being bad, like in a good way. Like, they're like getting into things. They're racing around the back field. And she said, some of these dogs were barely walking. Like, this stuff is amazing. Wow. And I went, oh, I might have to sell this. So I started selling it to clients who were coming in. And at that point, our practice had gotten big enough that a lot of our holistic clients, my name was getting known, holistic clients were driving anywhere from 3 to 7 hours each way to get to our clinics. And so then they were like, well, can you ship me my follow-up when if I'm not coming in and I need products, can you ship things to me? I'm like, I guess.
I'll have to figure that out too.
So we figured that out too. And then we actually figured out how to get our stuff on Amazon. And we started selling through Amazon. And then it became a real business at that point. I had to give it a name. So it became Naturally Healthy Pets. We took a course on how to sell on Amazon, which ended up being a huge scam. You might have heard of
Mm.
them. They called it FBA, but it was Fulfillment by Atom.
Oh, yeah, that
But
sounds
they
kind of familiar.
basically, yeah, they took off the Amazon name. FTC ended up stepping in after we had been in it for a couple of years, and we lost about $75,000 on the scam. But I actually sued them, and I was the only person who had a successful lawsuit against them. I got 25,000 back. So, and I actually did learn some from them.
Yeah.
They kind of knew what they were doing, but anyway, it was a big scam.
Yeah.
Like they got away with like $33 million. It was
Wow.
crazy.
Wow.
Totally. So I was like, wow, I actually feel like I made out pretty well in this.
Yeah.
Um,
Gosh.
so, but that was how the business really got started. That, it's like, I've got to figure out how to market these products and get my name out there. So Facebook was the thing that I was most familiar with. So that's the social media that we started with. And then I started dabbling on all the different social media. I couldn't keep up with it. So that's kind of how it got started.
Yeah.
And my husband was doing the shipping out of our garage. We ended up with a little warehouse in our garage. After a while, we said, well, why don't we find other products that we really like that fit in that same niche, things that I was using in my clinic, but then find other companies. So it grew organically
Hmm.
with, word of mouth, just my Facebook and, with different things that we could find. And it's gotten to the point, the first time somebody said to me that I was an influencer, I was like, what?
What's
What?
that?
Eh, I know. I was like, what is that? And then I went, oh, actually, you're right. I am.
Hmm.
Like, my company now has brought along so many small companies, little startups that are making these amazing products, and we find them or they find us. Um, and I mean, a lot of them, we've put them on the map and they've become really big,
What
which
a
is kind of fun.
what a cool journey too. I mean, obviously, and this I think is a testament, and why I want us to pause here for a second, to just not only in what you've been able to accomplish, but like all along the way, you've always been passionate about helping other people accomplish things too, right? And it's like,
Yeah.
but never really realizing. Or at least initially realizing the amount of impact that you've had and could have too, right? From Steve Harrison not
Yeah.
being able to say I'm an expert to now in
Right.
2016, 2018 saying I'm an influencer and I'm bringing all these other products together, to now having a booming e-commerce business that, like you said, has put these small businesses and startups like on the map, which is just
Yeah.
so cool. So kind of talk to me then a little bit about, what's next for you. I know you said you're working on your 8th book. And so kind of tell me like what's in the hopper for what Dr. Judy's doing next.
You know what? Sometimes I don't even know. So one of the things that I'm known for on my social media are my rants.
Hmm.
Like, I'm so passionate, and if something ticks me off, like I have no problem just going kind of ballistic, and people love it. We actually, I had a caricature drawn of me that we use on a lot of our labeling and
Yeah.
branding, um, and so we had the artist draw me on a soapbox with a cape,
Nice.
um, because I don't have a problem with speaking out. So I never know what the next big thing is going to be. So at the beginning of this year, when we had our very first meeting, I think it was January 2nd, and my daughter said, I think we need to plan more rants this year because people love your rants. And I said, you can't plan a rant. A rant occurs when something makes me mad. Like I get an article in a veterinary journal or I see something on social media and I'm just like, oh my God, we're killing animals. We can't use this. We can't do this. Like we have to change the
I
paradigm.
love that.
And so I just go off. And I said, but you can't plan rants. I'm sorry. And wouldn't you know it, the very next day, I got an email from a good friend who said, on my Facebook group, I have hundreds of sick and dying animals eating a certain food.
Hmm.
And I went, OMG. So on January 3rd, after my daughter said I needed more rants, there was the rant of the
Yeah.
century about all these sick and dying animals and nobody doing anything about it. And we're still in the throes of that big fiasco right now. So that literally kind of took over a lot of my first half of this year, like
Hmm.
trying to research what is going on, why it's going on. So for it's really just about being that advocate for the pets and the pet
Hmm.
parents. And we are really stepping up. Like we just started, oh gosh, I don't know if it was 1 year or 2 years ago. We started our online university
Oh, cool.
with educational courses. So we're always in the throes of making more courses, bringing more veterinarians and experts on with their courses, adding them to our university. And we're putting on a huge event, international event down in
Hmm.
Orlando in October. A lot of veterinarians, veterinary students. We actually gave 3 scholarships to veterinary
Oh,
students
cool.
to come, veterinary technician student, because for me, the thinking outside the traditional box and getting back to nature, getting away from all the chemicals and pesticides that we're using on our animals, getting away from the highly processed junk food that is just horrible for them, getting away from the over vaccination.
Hmm.
Like my profession has gone the wrong way, and we're trying to pull it back, and do things that are going to keep our animals alive longer, with a longer health span. And that's why I write so much and speak so much. So we're having this huge event, and it's really about, we're really pushing it to the veterinarians and the veterinary students, but it's also for the 2.0 pet parent who wants to be at, that level of, I want to know the best way to take care of my pet and keep them around. I want my dog to live 20 years. I want my cats to live 30 years. This is how I'm going to do it. Um, and we actually managed to get continuing education credits for our courses
Hmm.
online and for this event, because we need to shift how things are going in the profession. We need to shift how people are thinking. Um, I mean, I think if you talk to a naturopathic doctor, you're going to hear the same
Hmm.
thing. It's like the pharmaceutical industry has taken
Yep.
over, fast food, junk food, processed food has taken over, and we kind of accept living in a state of chronic
Hmm.
disease, both human and
Hmm.
pet. And there's a huge veterinary shortage. Well, there won't be a shortage if we didn't have to have our pets there every month with their chronic arthritis, chronic skin disease, chronic allergies, chronic IBD. And you know what? So much of that goes away when we get away from all
Stop.
that synthetic
Stop treating
stuff.
the symptoms and getting to the root. Love
Yeah,
it.
yeah. Let's just, like, like my dogs are living to 18 and 19. Why aren't everybody's
Hmm.
dogs living to
Yep.
19? And all of mine are rescues that got off to a really bad start. So, why can't we make that shift? So the passion continues, and I never know what's coming up next.
So, I mean, look, I think it's inarguably, you have done some really incredible and wave making and policy creating and all sorts of stuff within this industry. I mean, you were the holistic veterinarian of the decade, woman of the year in 2018 within that pet industry. Like you've really achieved so much, and not even in just your own achievements, but in helping pet parents and pets and the community within that space to really start rethinking how they're doing stuff. And I think that goes without question, which is also just bringing me to kind of this next really important part of who you are and what you've done. And that's, you started this business, well, this particular e-commerce and everything like that in your garage, like you said. And then you had a 7,000 square foot facility, and you've been doubling year after year, and you've got your own line of research products now that are made all over the world. And, it's like you've created this huge ecosystem and resource for people, that it's not just products, but now it's information, and it's all of these different things. So you are an entrepreneurial wizard in so many different ways. And I know that also comes with a great support group and all that kind of stuff, but
Oh
you're
yeah.
the driving force behind that. And so, being that our audience is a lot of people who may be entrepreneurs or aspiring entrepreneurs, there was a couple of things that you said that I would love to get your opinion on. And a couple of questions I want to ask. One of the things when we had talked about a month or two ago, you said, a lot of times when you face challenges or situations that you don't know what you're going to do, you said you could either step into it, step around it, or run the other way, right? Which I don't know if you kind of came up with that on the spot, but it was something that really stuck with me. And so I'd be interested in, what are some of the challenges that you had faced in your entrepreneurial journey that either left you feeling like, oh man, maybe this isn't the right path, or what were some of those hesitations that we've all felt in that journey, but you were able to push through? And then how did you push through that, and what was the mindset shift for you that was that let you do
Oh man, I've got a
it? Good.
bunch. So when I had been in practice I was in private practice working for somebody else. I was working for the guy who fired me for being pregnant. So that tells you how well we got along. But I was asked by the local college to speak to the pre-vet students and about being a veterinarian. I'd been out of school 4 years maybe. And I went and gave this lecture. I had all these slides of the practice and what we did all day and blah, blah, blah. And at the end, the instructor came over to me and said, if you hate your job so much, why are you doing it? And I went, oh my gosh, I just did an hour lecture to pre-vet students and came across as I really hate this
Wow.
profession. And I thought, oh my gosh, I need a mind shift. So, part of the mind shift was not working for that person anymore. So then I went off and did relief work and all kinds of things after I had my kid. But let's see, other challenges. So when I bought the practice from my partner, I borrowed $1 million to buy out. So I originally, when we started that practice, we bought it really cheap from a guy who was just retiring, and the place was a dump. And so I only had to invest $20,000, and I didn't have $20,000. I'd been out of school 10 years, maybe. I didn't have $20,000. I still had student loans.
Yeah.
I had, mortgages and blah, blah, blah. So I went to my grandfather and I said, can I borrow $20,000? And he said, yes. And I was like, cool, I'll pay you back. So, and I did. But then when I bought my partner out 8 years later, we had grown that practice to the point where I had to borrow $1 million to buy out his share. He had a 70% share and I had 30%, but still I had to borrow $1 million. So, how do you go borrow $1 million? I didn't have, I had good credit, but
Yeah, that's a great question.
luckily luckily my person who was the partner who was leaving, of course, he wanted the deal to go through because, he was getting $1 million. So he went to the bank for me basically and said, hey, the practice is doing great. She's going to continue to do great. She's going to do great. And basically kind of coerced them into giving me the loan. So, a little help from a friend never hurts. So I borrowed it. And then a year later, and I was so excited to be an owner and all this money is coming in, and I bought a new truck. I bought a sports car. I think I bought a shore house. I'm like, this is cool. And a year later, I couldn't make payroll, and I hadn't taken a paycheck for 6 weeks.
Wow.
And I went, holy crap, I'm going bankrupt. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. So, that was a pretty life-defining moment. I've got this big loan. And I got a phone call from, just a cold call from a consulting company saying that, they could help me out. I don't know how they know. Yeah, actually, I do know because I'm a firm believer in a higher power. And the higher power said, Budding, you need help. and put this in my path. And then I said, yeah, I really need help. How do I do that? And they were like, okay, well, it's $33,000. And I said, I just told you I can't make payroll. And they said, well, that's what it is, but you need help. And I knew I needed help. And so I went home and cried my eyes out, and they called me back the next day, which was my birthday. And I said, you know what? I have a credit card that has a $35,000 limit. I'm going to spend it on you. And I'm either going down in flames or you're going to help me figure this out. And so I hired them. Within 2 weeks, I discovered my embezzling office manager because I had to do all of this paperwork for them to, so they could help me. So got rid of my embezzling office manager. So that kind of helped that nobody was stealing anymore. We went from 13 employees to 8. And when I hired them, I said, "You're going to fire these people for me, right?" And they're like, "Don't worry, it'll work itself out." And I'm like, "I've never fired anybody. I don't know how to fire any. I don't want to. These are my friends." And they were like, "Don't worry, it'll work itself out." And I couldn't figure out how it would work itself out. But there was a lot of work that the consultants asked all of the employees to do. And everybody was it was basically working through
Mm,
statistics and data and planning out, like, this is how many of this I need to sell a month. This is how many of this I need to sell a month. And then making each staff member in charge of one of those statistics. And then they have to be the cheerleader to get their
yeah.
statistic where they want it to be. So
Accountability.
5 of the staff said, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And 5 of the staff said, "Oh, that's way too much. I don't want to
Mm,
do that." And they were the 5 who were just kind of loafing around, barely doing their job. And I knew they were not very
right.
productive and very good at what they were doing. So they all quit. And I was like, wow, that was
It
easy.
did work itself out.
It worked itself out. So, just put things in somebody else's hands and things do tend to work themselves out. And let's see, then we had the money that we lost on the Amazon
Mm,
scam. But every time one of these things comes along, for me, it's sink or swim. It's they're like the guy with the supplements. It's like, I'm gonna have to pay for these, so I better figure out what I'm
mm,
gonna do with them. Um, and look what it's
yeah.
ended up being. I mean, now I've got this huge warehouse. So I did thank him last time I saw him at a meeting. I was like,
Thanks for calling me 12 times. And
um, yeah, thanks for being a pain in my butt. But so yeah, I mean, again, you step into it or you run the other way. And so yes, I could have gone bankrupt and lost my business and defaulted on $1 million loan. Um, when I had my practices, and even now, because when I retired from clinical practice, this is
yeah,
my retirement.
more work.
The only employee I had in Naturally Healthy Pets for the e-commerce was my husband and me. And then my daughter offered to take it over and see what she could do with it. She's an engineer. And I said, sure, go for it. And she wanted to quit her other job. And she said, I don't know what to do. And so I was like, well, give it a try. And she's really the one that's responsible. Like, my husband and I were doubling it year over year, but it was it was nothing when we started. So that was easy to double.
Mm,
Um, but she has really just run with it. She's hired an amazing team. So now I'm back up to, I don't know, 12 or 13
okay.
employees again. And I'm like, wait, I didn't want to have employees. Like, but she's put together this amazing, amazing team. But I guess part of my reason for making things work is I feel
Mm,
responsible for them. I feel responsible for them being able to have a good income, support their families, care for themselves, care for their families. We supply all the pet food for our employees, um, because we want them to eat the way we want them to eat. But and they see amazing changes in them. Um, but it's very important. Like, they need healthcare and they need retirement accounts. And luckily, the business has been growing well enough that we're able to
mm,
do all of that. And we've been sort of, I can't say it's been slow growth because it's doubling every year, so it's
yeah,
really crazy.
yeah.
Um, and once you hit, the millions and millions mark, it's like, how do you keep doubling that? And then
Just keeps
it,
happening somehow.
I don't know. I think it's because people
Yeah.
see our passion. People see that, we're not just trying to sell them things. We're trying to
Yeah.
help them. Like, it really is about helping people and helping pets. And I think they see that passion and they trust our honesty. Like, even the companies that we will take on and promote their products, we look at the integrity of the people within that company. And it's not just having a good product, it's also having a good company standing behind your product. Um, there are some companies out there that literally have built their brands by bad mouthing and climbing up the backs of their competitors. And that's not the way to do it. The way to do it is to find people that you really like and trust, that have products that you like and trust, and then you
Mm,
collaborate. Uh, so I would caution anybody who has a business, wants to start a business, always keep integrity and your morals high, 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 high. And as long as you always speak the truth, who can refute that? And just don't speak badly. What I say to people is like, we get products sent to us on a daily basis. Here, look at my product. Will you market my product? Will you sell my product? And, what I tell them is, look, if I don't like it, I will tell you that I don't like it, but I'm not going to tell everybody
Mm.
else I don't like it. I will just say that, no, we're not going
Yeah.
to carry that. And I teach people how to read labels so that they, if they find some, and, I get emails every day. Hey, doc, what do you think about this supplement that my vet recommended? And I'm like, well,
Let's read the
okay,
label.
let's look at the label.
Yeah.
And, these are the 5 things that I wouldn't give my pet, but you decide.
I love that. Well, that's great advice. And I think we talk about a lot of times in personal branding is the reason why you share your story is because that is really where your passion can come out and people can understand the person behind what's going on. And it's that level of authenticity that encourages people and makes them feel like, man, I just want to work with you, Dr. Judy. Like I want to go, I'm going to check out your website for my pet supplements because your story's amazing and you've done incredible things. And I love your personality and whatever it is, because we do business with people that we know, like, and trust, but you have to have that integrity in order for
Yes.
people to be able to trust you. So yeah, that's great advice. Thank you.
Yeah. Actually, half of our employees found us. They're like, I just want to
Wow.
work for you.
That's a big deal.
It's kind of nice. It
Yeah,
makes for a
yeah,
good team.
absolutely. So as we kind of wrap up our interview today, and I feel like you've had some amazing things to share with us, I would love to hear from you, like, as you are, and I know you're passionate because we've talked about this before, passionate in working with those small businesses and those entrepreneurs and those people who are out there. So like, if you were to give some additional advice, if you were to think of maybe the one thing to sort of summarize what we've talked about, or something that we haven't talked about yet, that might be directed right at that person who's in their entrepreneurial journey and maybe facing some of those challenges that you had expressed, and what would be your piece of advice for them?
If it really is your passion, it'll work out. Don't try to put the square peg in the round hole, though. If you're like, oh, somebody told me this would be a great way to make a bunch of money, and that's your only goal, it's not going to happen. Your goal has to be, I truly believe in this, and I don't care if that's widgets. It's like, oh, I know this is absolutely going to be the best, whatever it is. Stick with it. This company started in 2016. I did not take any salary from Naturally Healthy Pets until 2021, and I was the lowest paid person in the company until this year. I'm finally taking something close to what a CEO should be making. And, I've been not fortunate. I worked my butt off in my vet clinics and, doing other things so that I could bootstrap this company. We've never borrowed money for this company. Well, no, I can't say never. 1 year we did. We borrowed money to stock for Cyber Week,
Gotcha.
Black Friday, because we knew it was going to be a big year. So we had to like really load up. So it's 8 years in for me to actually, like if I didn't have other money to live on, I would have needed to have another job for those 8 years. And so I think that sometimes people get really frustrated and this is never going to work. I'm never going to get anywhere. If it's really your passion, stick with it, but pour your heart into it. So I can't tell you how many 100-hour weeks I've worked, how many 7-day a week. But I was really passionate about it. I wanted it to work. When we were first building this, we did at least 40 tabling events a year on the weekends. So that was working in the clinic 5 days a week, and then at least 40 weekends out speaking, pushing, promoting, standing in the rain, standing in windstorms, horrible, signing books in the backs of rooms, to sell one book. And if you haven't written a book, and you're passionate about something, write a book. It's a great calling card. It is an amazing calling card.
Well, yeah, thanks for that. We do talk about that all the time. Such a great calling card. And so my final question, and this is what I ask everybody, and I'd be curious as to what your opinion is about it as well. But how has your personal brand, by sharing your story and your passion, really contributed to getting to where you are today and being able to do that?
It's interesting. When I first started with Steve, it's kind of one of those, okay, my first book was From Needles to Natural. Okay. So am I branding From Needles to Natural? Am I branding Naturally Healthy Pets? Am I branding Dr. Judy Morgan? And Steve looked at me and he said, who is somebody going to hire to speak? Are they going to hire From Needles to Natural to speak? No. Are they hiring Naturally Healthy Pets to speak? No. Yeah, they're hiring Dr. Judy Morgan. So who do you need to brand? Oh, okay. I better talk about me, and I better get people to like me because I want people to hire me. So that was great advice that he gave me. Now that can backfire because here we are 8 years later, and I just got Medicare this month.
I wouldn't have guessed.
At some point, I am going to say, no, I truly am going to retire. And so, my legacy is that my name and my brand will carry on. But at some point, Naturally Healthy Pets has to be the brand that everybody is going for, not just Dr. Judy Morgan. I mean, I'll probably be on the speaking circuit for another 15 years. So
yeah,
mostly because I love it. And now I've been getting a lot of international
That's
invites.
cool.
So that's even cooler. It's like, oh, somebody wants to pay me to go overseas.
Yes, please.
Okay.
Does it have a beach?
Yes, I'm in. Hey, the next year's invite is Malta. And I'm like, I had to look up where it was.
That's great.
But it's very cool.
Man.
I'm like, well, if I'm hitting Malta, then I'm going to Greece and Italy too.
Well,
so
congratulations.
So that's how it works out.
Cool. And I've, to your point too, there is a transition phase. And I know one of our clients who we've done a documentary on, it was called The Yield of Dreams, was Charlie Epstein. And he built this huge financial practice and, and everything else. And it was all built on his name. And then he ended up selling the company, but they kept him on. And so he got bought out and then was making more on top of it because his brand was such a part of it. So it was like he was getting paid image and likeness rights, because his brand was still tied to it as they built out, the Yield of Dreams and everything like that. Same thing with Gino Wickman and the EOS Entrepreneurial Operating System, right? It's like now it's EOS worldwide, but it was all about Gino Wickman, and then they bought it out and it became that brand as he, goes off to do other things. So cool. Well, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for sharing your wisdom. Some of the laughs that we've shared too. It's been a real pleasure. So I appreciate your time today.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
Yeah. And thank all of you. Appreciate you guys listening. And as always, if you found this helpful, please like, subscribe, share. And until next time, keep elevating and accelerating. Cheers.